Alright guys, so now I'm going to talk about why editing software is super crucial for content creators. I don't care if you're creating courses, if you're creating YouTube videos, whatever it is that you're creating, it's super important and it's super crucial for content creators for this reason. First and foremost, it allows you to go in and kind of perfect your video. So a lot of times when I used to update videos, or not update, when I used to upload videos, I would just upload the entire raw video file that I recorded. The reason being is I didn't understand how to actually go through and edit and cut certain things out. I also didn't understand like the beginning, how to cut out beginning videos. So you would see like OBS, you'd literally see me recording. This is the software that I use to record. It's 100% free and I absolutely love it. Now I have paid softwares, but I find that this is actually one of the best recording softwares out there. But in the beginning, you would literally see me hit record, then I'd minimize it, and then I'd start talking, and that just looked terrible. And then at the end, you would see me go through and you'd see, oh, stop recording. And that would also look terrible. You have to be able to cut those things out. Now that is super basic when you're talking about editing softwares, especially with Premiere Pro, but that's where you want to start. And more importantly, if you mess up, for example, if I were to stutter or something, or lose my train of thought about what I'm talking about, and I was thinking, oh, I wanted to, and then I just lost my train of thought and didn't know what to say. Well, normally, in the past, that would just completely be in there, and I would lose my viewers' attention. That's crucial on Udemy. It's crucial on Skillshare. It's crucial on YouTube. It's literally crucial anywhere, any place, anytime. Even Instagram, if you're clipping videos for Instagram or whatever, you don't want to lose your audience's attention, because audience retention is important. So audience attention and retention is what I basically said. They sound very similar. You don't want to lose the audience's attention by hurting your audience retention. And watch time is crucial on Udemy videos and Udemy courses. It's also crucial on YouTube. And the last thing that you want to do is lose somebody's attention, not on the merit of your actual content or what you're actually saying and presenting to them, but because you stuttered or you lost your train of thought. And if I did that now, you would be none the wiser, because what I would do is I would edit that out in the software like Premiere Pro, like I'm going to show you in this course. So basically the whole reason and the whole reason I'm tying this into this is because it gives you the creative freedom to go out there and hit record, especially if you're new, especially if you're uncomfortable with it and you think, what if I mess up? What if I look stupid? What if I don't, like the way it looks? Well, it gives you the creative freedom to go ahead and record with full-heartedly knowing that you can go back and edit something out if you don't like it. You don't have to post it. You can go ahead and basically create a final cut, a final product after that. You don't have to just give the raw video. So I had so much trepidation and so much worry initially when I first started posting things, and I had to get over that fear and just click post, even though I knew the videos were terrible. And that's, there's something to be said about that, but now you don't have to do that. Now I don't have to do that. And after you take this course, you won't either, because you can just edit those little things out. You can edit little stutters out. You can edit little, little like that out. If I were to forget something, or a little pause, you can just edit those things out so that other people don't realize that they're in there. Furthermore, one thing that is important in this course is everybody that's watching this course is going to be in a different place. If you're watching this course, I'm assuming that the majority of you don't have that much experience with either editing software or Premiere Pro in general. If you're more advanced, then more power to you. The key here that I want to say is, if you're starting from, a beginner perspective or even a moderate perspective, you don't have to master everything at once. I didn't learn this overnight. I didn't take some, tutorial course and just master Premiere Pro right away. It wasn't like that. I learned all this over 2 years basically of editing content and kind of going through the motions. So the key thing here is a lot of these lectures that we're going to touch on, and a lot of these kind of topics that we're going to touch on, and things that I'll add onto the course as well, are just, like I said, and I've hit it home, they're just tools in your tool belt. They're skills that you can potentially add to your arsenal. You don't have to master everything overnight. You don't have to master it all at once. What you do want to understand is, the cutting, the editing basics that we're going to touch on, and then, come back to the course if you need to and add certain things and play around with them. The key thing I want you to touch on is, A, you don't have to master it, like I said, but B, you'll learn more doing it. So watch the course, learn everything in the course, watch it and familiarize yourself with different techniques, especially the cutting, which is pretty much just just editing 101. But then, you'll try to implement them yourself. So go out and edit a video and try to implement some things. You will learn more doing it than you will watching this course. So definitely watching the course is important, but go out there and do it. The more you do it, the more you implement these things in your own editing software on your own computer, and you go through the process and actually pump out video content that's cut, the better you'll get at it in the long run. So wanted to touch on that because that's very, very important. I don't want people to feel overwhelmed if, the very first time I ever saw editing software and I basically saw, like a bunch of an edit built out with like a bunch of different tracks, and that's something we'll talk about here in this course as well. It was overwhelming for me, and I literally thought, what is that? That looks like, foreign language to me. I will never be able to do that, and it was very overwhelming. And one thing that I want to touch on is you don't have to understand all that at once. Once you get a little bit more advanced, you'll start realizing just how easy that actually is to do. But if it overwhelms you, just take it one step at a time, master one lecture and one technique, and then move on to the other one, and just learn by doing, guys. Take the action, start getting in there and editing things yourself. Okay, so moving on to adding files and ordering files, one of the benefits of a software like Premiere Pro is the ability to add multiple files that you're going to use initially, and then you can kind of use them in your workspace a little bit easier. Now, I have an entire course on Shotcut, but with a free software like Shotcut, you don't really have the creative freedom as much as you do on a software like Premiere Pro. So let me show you how to add files. It's pretty, self-explanatory. You can either file, open, or you can just click down here in the import media to start in this bottom left category and just start dragging files in there. So if I wanted to add, let's go down to maybe like this one right here. Let's add dividend stocks I'm buying. These are random videos from one of my YouTube channels. And then maybe Alex Becker is lying to us. And let's add a picture as well. Maybe this Atomic Email Hunter picture. And that's basically, it just kind of gives you a little workspace. Now, it's important to keep in mind too that if at any point in time you don't feel like you need any one of these windows up, this right here will be the majority of your effects controls. And depending on how yours is set up, you can kind of drag them around and switch them around. I like this setup the best, but it is important to keep in mind that you don't need any of these open. So if I don't really want to see my graphics or my lower thirds area over here, I can just drag it over. If I don't want to see this right here, well, guess what? I can just drag it over. Now, this will be the majority of where your workstation is down here, and this will be where all the stuff that you plan on using will be, and where you upload and add those actual files. But like I said, you can drag anything around. So if you don't need this right away, well, then drag that. This is all the tools that you'll use too. So this is your razor tool where you're going to cut. This is your select tool, your text tool, so on and so forth. If you don't need that high, well, you can drag that over too, because you can still see that as well. So the main thing, if we start dragging a video file over to the work area, you'll see that it pops up here. And you'll start to see that you can work on it down here in this bottom area right here. You have your video 1 track right there. It's also paired with your audio track 1. Then you have a video track 2, a video track 3, and you can obviously add as you go there too. Audio track 2, audio track 3. Basically, your main 2 tracks are the middle one, so your video track number 1 and your audio track number 1, and then you build out from there with other video and audio files, which is something you'll learn a little bit more in this course when we move on. Now, it is important to keep in mind if you do need to kind of, you'll see here that like this is like 2 minutes, and then this is like 30 seconds later or like 10 seconds later, you can't really work on it this well right here. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to drag this kind of moving bar down here at the bottom all the way so that you can kind of see it more. If you drag it over, it'll start to maximize it a little bit more. So if you drag it over to the left, this bar gets smaller and then it maximizes this, and then you can kind of play around with it. That was loud. Did not mean to do that. Then you can kind of play around with it a little bit more and cut around a little bit easier. You can kind of see it. You can always drag it a little bit further so that you can see it a little bit better. And you can always drag it a little bit less if you want to kind of zoom out and move around a little bit more and see your track that way. Now, this is obviously what the video is going to look like up here. So if you add a track or you add something, this is what you're actually watching. This is what the final product is going to look like. And this is the workstation down here. But that's basically how you add a file and how you're going to order your files. So, just important to keep in mind that this is your workspace over here. So then if I wanted to add a picture, that's where I'd go about doing that. If I wanted to add another video file, well, at the end, well, then I would just simply come all the way to the end and I would add that video file in there. And that's pretty self-explanatory right there. That's ordering and adding file basics. Pretty basic stuff, but I do get that question a lot. And obviously that's after you open up Premiere Pro and actually title your project, which is also pretty self-explanatory. All right, this is something else I want to talk about briefly because it's important. Now, this is an editing course, but it is an editing course with the content creators, focus and strategy in mind. So one thing I want to talk about is, when you're uploading a file. So if we go back to this first file that I drug in there, the dividend stocks video, This you can see is clearly a synced file. The audio and the video are together. So if I play it really fast, you'll see what I mean.
That I'm looking into, I'll pop pictures of their ticker symbols and their their 5-year graph up on the screen for you. All of these pay a dividend except one of them that I'm going to talk to you really briefly at.
All right, that might have sounded a little bit like off or a little bit kind of weird to you because I'm actually playing it through the computer and the mic is listening from the computer on your end, so it might sound a little strange to you. I'm actually listening to it on the computer. But the key here to understand is this audio is actually synced up. When I record this, I'm recording it with a blue snowball microphone that actually plugs into my computer. So the whole thing here is it depends for you whether you're going to actually upload a file or drag a file in here, and the audio is already going to be pre-synced to that because you're recording with a video and audio already synced together. For a lot of people, and I know I did this when I started, you might have the video and the audio file synced, completely different. So maybe you have your video file, but then there's no audio there and you can't actually hear it. So, it might be something like this initially. See, there's no audio there. And then you have to actually input your audio file as well. So you'd have to, put it in your workflow over here and then drag it in and measure it up. That's obviously annoying. It's something you want to avoid. So if you can, obviously you want to, record with the end game in mind, the editing game in mind. You want to make sure that they're synced. However, if you don't, then what I would make sure to do is just kind of maximize it as much as possible to the point where you can kind of still see it. And then you kind of want to just mesh it up to, that you really see, okay, when you start talking, when your mouth is moving, and just mesh the audio and sync it up together. But like I said, ideally, this will be all done already for you, but I just wanted to touch on it because I know there are some people out there that are recording with just like, iPhone mics and, just recording their video, so they have to sync their audio up. But for 99.9% of you, this probably will not be you. All right, so now we're going to touch a little bit on cutting. Now this, if you pick up any one thing from this course, this is super, super important. And the biggest thing, it's the most basic in a lot of ways, but it's the biggest thing that you can learn to master. So we're going to talk about cutting. Now I'm going to drag a pre-recorded, so, before, that last one I think was post-edit. This one I'm going to drag something in that's pre-edit. So let's take one from this actual course. I'll show you exactly how we recorded something for this actual course. And let's actually take the synced audio versus adding audio video that we literally I just filmed this, I just recorded this, so I haven't obviously edited it yet. And I want to kind of go through and show you how I would go about doing that. So let's drag this over into our workstation, and you'll see here that if we maximize it, there's a bunch of stuff in the beginning with the OBS, like I was talking about in one of the first lectures, that we need to cut out. So how do we go about doing that? There's two situations that I mainly use to cut. So first and foremost, we're going to use this cut tool. So the razor tool that looks kind of like a little razor, you want to click on that. That's going to show you this little line, if you see it in the bars, and that's how you're going to cut. Now, you'll notice if you're not that maximized, it's going to be hard to really cut at the right spot. So you really want to maximize your view and then drag it over so that you get the most crisp cut that you can possibly get. So you'll notice if I go all the way to the beginning and I click, and this is, just to give you an idea, if you guys want to go back to the last section or the beginning, just hit go to in, this little arrow right here. If you want to go all the way to the end, hit this arrow right here, and then obviously this is like the play and, rewind and fast forward and stuff like that. So I'm going to go all the way to the beginning, and you'll notice that if I kind of scroll out a little bit here, there's that OBS in the beginning where I'm not recording. I'm getting ready to record, but that looks terrible. I don't want that in the video if I'm going to cut it out, right? Boom, that's where the video starts. And so what I basically want to do is I want to maximize this and then draw that out. I want to cut it out. So I'm going to maximize it, and then just so you can kind of see, I'll scroll over a little bit. And then I want to kind of place this cursor. Ideally, if you want it as maxed as possible, but you don't have to get too anal about this. If I cut it here, it's going to look very, very similar to if I cut it there. You also don't want to cut it too close where it's going to cut off some words. That's also another mistake. So you want to cut it, right? And then you'll see this line up here there. You've cut that. Now they're two different sections. So if I go back to the selection tool and I select this, you'll notice that highlights. It's a completely different section. Now if I select this, that's the one that I want to delete too. So it's a completely different section. Now you can keep in the razor tool and delete them. I was just kind of wanted to show you that they're different sections. So if I right click on this section now, and then you'll scroll all the way up to clear, that will clear it out. However, one thing that's important to understand is clearing is different than the ripple delete. So if I undo that, What clearing does is it basically just removes that, but it doesn't move it in the track. So if I just cleared that like this, oops, didn't mean to click that. If I just cleared that and hit this, well, then you're going to still have all this blank space in the beginning that's not really playing because it's not dragged all the way over to the track. So whether you're doing it in the beginning, whether you're doing it at the end, or whether it's somewhere in the middle, so if we cut this right here and then we click clear, see how it doesn't move it over? It's just this empty black space. So it's going to be playing, and then it's just going to be a blank space. You don't want that either. So the thing that you want to do instead of the clear is we'll undo all those, and we'll undo this last one, is you want to, instead of hitting clear, you want to right click on it and then click ripple delete. What that will do is it will clear it and then move this, the end of this, of the other one, of the other section, all the way up to that one. So if we just ripple delete this really fast, it's going to move it all the way over like we wanted.
All right, this is something else I want to talk about.
Boom, and that's how it looks when you're done. Now to give you another example, for whatever reason, there might be, you know, lulls in what you're saying. So if I'm going to go through and edit this, what I would do is I'd literally watch this video in its entirety and see if, okay, maybe there's a lull in something that I'm talking about that, you know, isn't very captivating. Maybe I say ooh or too much and I want to cut that out. And the way that I would do that is using this cutting tool. So if for whatever reason, let's say I, you know, or maybe I lost the train of thought like we were talking about before and I wanted to cut that out. You know, sometimes there'll be something, if I'm going over and touching on points and I have like an outline right next to me, there'll be a situation where I need to stop and I forget and I want to make sure that I check the outline so that I can make sure to hit on the points that I want to hit on. Sometimes you'll notice that there's just a lull and there's no audio there, and you might do something very similar if you have points that you want to touch on as well, or if you just forget something. So let's hypothetically say that I stop talking from about here to about here. What I want to do there is I want to just cut that out, right? So I'm gonna maximize this a little bit. Obviously, you can't really see it that well because we're just believing that it's there. But if it were there, you'd obviously be able to see the audio waves down here in this bottom one that just kind of die out. And then you can see that obviously when you're watching too. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut it from here to about right there where we're going to pretend that the audio dies out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to right click it, right? Because you'll notice when we right click it, it highlights that middle one, right click it, and then we're not going to hit clear. Remember, we're going to ripple delete it. And what that's going to do is it's going to move this right one over here all the way over to this left one right here and just completely delete this middle section out so that it looks flush when we actually kind of go through and, you know, when we play it, it's going to kind of just flow into the next section and nobody will be the wiser. So this might be a better example if I kind of, let me check this one really fast.
Stocks video.
So it's a perfect example right there. I'm recording this video right here, and if we play it again,
How that I drug in there, the dividend stocks video. This you can see.
That's an Now, every once in a while, I don't mind keeping uhs in there or ums or, you know, little, you know, nuances here and there. Especially with a lecture, I feel like it kind of conveys a lot more of a real personality. So I don't cut them out, and I don't want them to be too perfect. Even on YouTube videos, I won't really do that. But every once in a while, if I notice that there's too many uhs or I'm saying too many things, what I'll go ahead and I'll do is I'll cut them out. So if I notice that this is where the audio wave picks up and I say if we watch this one more time.
First file that I drug in there, the dividend stocks video. This you can see.
That's just an I say dividend stocks video, and this you can see. So I want to cut that out. I don't want that in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it right about here, and I'm going to cut it right about here, and just completely take this section out, and then I'll play it for you, and nobody will be the wiser. I'm going to ripple delete it so it moves over, right? And then I'm going to play it from here, and you won't really notice a difference.
First file that I drug in there, the dividend stocks video. This you can see is clearly.
See, nobody in the final product, nobody at the very end is going to be any the wiser. So I just cut that out, and nobody even notices, you know, that there. So like I said, you can use it for two main reasons. You can cut inside your video, so you can cut into the meat of your video if you have like different things. This might be another example right here. Let's check it out.
Can actually hear it. So, you know, it might be something like this initially.
No, I'm actually using that to demonstrate a lull. So you can cut it out, cut certain things out in the middle, and that's basically what I said. It gives you the creative freedom to know that you can record, and if you mess up, you can just cut it out with this cut tool. This is basically editing 101. Cutting is basically the best and the most important thing that you can learn editing-wise, in my opinion. There are some other great things that you can add tools to your tool belt at the end, But if you're not cutting in the middle, you're going to want to take that beginning part out when you're getting ready, and you're also going to want to cut the end part out right here. So if you look, it ends early, and then I go back to OBS, and then I, if we're right here, you can see OBS start to appear, and I'm hitting stop the recording. So I'm going to cut that out at the end as well, not just the beginning. So let's play it.
Have to sync their audio up, but for 99.9% of you, this probably will not be you.
Boom. And I'm done talking there. So I don't want the end of this video there. I want to cut that out, right? So I'm going to cut that where the audio stops and ripple delete it. And then let's play the end, and I'll stop the video without showing any of that.
Sync their audio up, but for 99.9% of you, this probably will not be you.
Boom. And that's the video. So that's cutting in a nutshell. That's as simple as I can describe cutting to you and explain it to you. Start using this more yourself. This is literally, probably the thing that I use most in anything whatsoever. So I'll put my main video and audio file there, and I'll run through it, and I'll basically cut everything that I don't like out of it. I'll cut the beginning. I'll cut the end of it. I'll cut little lulls and little mess ups here and there. That way I can go through and I can record a video knowing full well that I can edit it and make it look perfect. Not perfect, that's a bad word. Make it look a lot more professional in the end game. I don't have to worry about recording it perfectly, when I'm just doing it initially. And then once I get that final product and there's a bunch of cuts in there, then if I want to go back and add certain tracks, which is something we'll talk about in 2 lectures from now, so layering different videos and layering audios in like the video 2 and the audio 2 and stuff like that. It's different music, maybe different sound effects, maybe different pictures or something like that. I'll show you how to do that. But first and foremost is the cutting. I go through and I cut everything out that I don't like, get that, as close to perfect as I want it or as possible, and then I'll go through and add on top of that. But the first things first is cutting. That's editing 101. All right, really briefly, I want to touch on the fact that this is something we'll touch on in another later lecture, but right now I want to just let you know that we did go through the cutting. So if you take the select tool up here, like we talked about, this is a section. When you cut this one, this is a section, obviously this is a section. And one thing that I want to touch on and remind you of is if you do anything, any editing, any effects, any different things to something in this workflow down here after you've cut, keep in mind that that will only apply to that specific section. So if you do something right here, if you edit it, if you switch up the visuals, if you do something later on, like maybe adjusting the saturation or anything like that, literally anything, if you adjust the volume, I'll show you how to do that. That only applies to the section. So a couple things to keep in mind. You can do the same thing if that's something you want throughout your entire video. You can do the same thing throughout that for every section, or you can simply go back to the very beginning before you cut anything. Obviously, where it's just one full section, and then make that before you do the cutting. So if you want to do your effects, maybe that might be something that you start with the end game in mind. You make those adjustments ahead of time before you cut, so you don't have to go through and edit every single section. Just keep that in mind. So I would recommend if you plan on adjusting any saturation, like I said, we're gonna have specific lectures on saturation. Basically switching, maybe inputting a transition. That's something that we'll talk about in between sections. Maybe it's just adding text, or maybe it's adjusting the color, or even speeding up a portion of the video or adjusting the volume levels. All that is something that you might want to think about doing initially before you start cutting anything. So make those edits and then go through with your cut tool and cut them, and then you can move on from there. Alright guys, so now I really briefly want to talk about layering different video and audio files. Now this is an important thing, like we talked about before, so I'm going to take my my selection tool right here and go back, because we're going to pretend that you're done the cutting here. You went through and you did all your cuts, and you kind of edited the main part of your video, which, like we talked about before, is the video file 1 and the audio track 1, and then you're going to build it out from there. So this is what we're talking about with layering. If I'll pop a video up on the screen, not a video, a picture of a completed, I'll throw 2 or 3 different ones up simultaneously as I'm talking right now, so you can see exactly what I mean by this. And you'll see that there's multiple different tracks there. There's multiple different layers. They build it out from the middle. They build it out from video 1 and audio 1, and then also you add audio files down, and you add audio files, or you add video files up to your video section. So I'm going to show you how to do a little bit of that here. Obviously you're just going to drag and drop, but it is something to keep in mind, because when I first started and I was first getting into this, and I saw those pictures or those I was watching watching a video and somebody was editing a video, it looked like it was a completely different language to me. But I'm going to show you how to do that here in this lecture right here. It's actually a lot simpler than you think. So we have our main video file in right here with obviously has audio attached, and we have video 1 and audio 1. Now if I wanted to add potential B-roll or add another layer, maybe for whatever reason I'm talking in this video and right about the 15 mark I want to add some B-roll there, or an image, well then I would obviously add that in my workstation over here in my workflow. And let's just add a fire symbol, for example. That's a bad example, but let's just say I wanted to add that in. Well, then I would drag that up into the video track that I'd want it there. I wouldn't obviously put it over this because that's just gonna completely negate the video right there. I want to drag it over top because the main video file is what you want, so the main video and audio file in 1 and 2, but as you build out, that will take precedence. So a video track 3 right here will take precedent over video track 2. Video track 2 will take precedent over video track 1, and so on and so forth. Same thing with audio. Audio track 3 will take precedent over audio track 2, and audio track 2 will take precedent over audio track 1. So whatever's on the outskirts will be heard and seen first. That's something to keep in mind as you build out. So remember that concept, build out when you're doing this. So if you see here, this obviously is overlaid on this video, and that's something to keep in mind. Now, like I said, you can build out there. So one thing that you might want to be able to do too is if you're going to add B-roll, which is something I'll show you in another lecture too. Let's say that for whatever reason I wanted to add a little bit of this Alex Becker video as B-roll. Well, what I would do is maybe I want to add the fire up here, the fire sign up there, and then I want to take a little portion of this. So I'm going to drag it. You'll notice that it has the audio file synced like usual. But what you're going to want to do is drag it to the other video file, and you notice the audio file goes down to audio track 2 as well. And I'm going to paste it in there. And then maybe you kind of want to go through, and if you want to kind of touch on what's actually there, I'm not going to show you how to unlink right now, even though I've done it in the past. I'm going to show you how to do that in a lecture in the future. But it's important to keep in mind that if you want this as B-roll, you'll start to see that, okay, this is what's playing right here. This is the main video. Your first audio file is what you're seeing as this is dragging. But as it gets to right here, you're going to start to see the Becker video or the B-roll in the second video track that takes precedent. Boom. So there you go. I'm still playing the audio from this, but you're starting to see that this track takes precedent, and you're starting to see this track video-wise, and this is what the audience is seeing. This is what your viewer is going to see. Now, as we get to the fire sign, that's going to take precedent as well, and that'll be it's a PNG file, so you'll see past it through the other Becker track. But that being said, it is over top, so that's important to keep in mind. Build out when you're doing this. Boom, there's that track. It's starting to go there.
So if we go back to this first file that I drug in there, the dividend stocks video.
Then the fire sign pops up, obviously. Now, if I were to delete, if I pause this right here, if I were to delete the rest of this and cut this, you'll start to see that, okay, it comes back to this track right there, right about there. So it should obviously take precedent with Becker there, then it'll come back to the fire sign right there with Becker, and then it'll lose the Becker track right there and come back to this one right there while still having the fire sign. So that's how you build out an audio track. Let me show you. Build out a video track, I meant to say.
When you're uploading a file, so if we go back to this first file that I drug in there, the dividend stocks video, this you can see is clearly a sync.
Then it syncs back, then it disappears. So that's how you basically do it. The main thing to understand here and the main thing to keep in mind is you want to build out, like I said, video and audio tracks 1 are your main files. That's what you're building out from. Then you're adding on top of that, if for whatever reason you want to add B-roll, and we're going to talk about B-roll and what that actually is later on toward the end of this actual course. But that's just what you want to keep in mind. You don't have to do that as well. You don't have to add multiple tracks. You can obviously just keep them on the same one if you want. Just keep in mind that you don't want to overlap them. If they're overlapping, then you have to build it out on the other track, and whatever's top will take precedence. So if you don't want the fire to be seen, but you want the Becker thing to be seen there, then obviously that goes out on the outer track. So that's basically adding different tracks and layering different tracks. Now, if we wanted to add the audio, for example, let's say we came up with an audio file. Is this a, I think this is a, I don't think this is an audio file. Let's go with, let me show you really fast. Let me take another track right here. All right, this is clearly a synced video again, but I'm going to delete I'm going to unlink it just to show you. And we're going to go over how to do this later and what exactly it means. So for whatever reason, if I were adding an audio file, like I said, same general principle down here. You can do this with sound effects that will be a little bit shorter. You can do this with music tracks, and that's something we'll touch on a little bit later in this course and coming lectures. But same thing with the audio files. So you're going to build out. This audio file will take precedent over this audio track 1, and then same thing goes here. So if for whatever reason there was 2 of them, then this audio file down here would take precedent because it's in the last, it's in the outer section. So outer ones are always overlapping the inner ones, and that's something to keep in mind. But main thing is just build out. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I would love to answer them for you. But that's just layering different tracks and how they take precedent over each other 101. All right, now we're going to talk about unlinking video and audio for certain video tracks, depending on if you want this. Now, this could be done for multiple reasons. This could be used as B-roll. I'll show you that in a second. But basically, this is pretty simple, and I've already shown you how to do it without basically saying it. What you're going to do is you're going to right-click on the entire track that's linked, and you're going to scroll up to unlink, and that will literally unlink them together. So now you can select just the video portion, and you can move it, or you can delete it. You can select just the audio portion, and you can move it, or you can delete it. And this is, twofold. So if we undo that and we just make it linked again, this is twofold. So if we wanted to add B-roll, like we touched on before, if we wanted to add a different video track, this is exactly what I did in the last lecture, and we drug it up to the second tracks, and the second audio track and second video track, well, then you can unlink them and move them. So if I just wanted the audio for this, or if I just wanted the video for this, a lot of times I'll do this with a video and I'll unlink the audio because I don't want the actual audio there. You can do twofold. You can actually mute this, so you can actually mute this track as well, or you can simply unlink it, which is what I do, and then simply delete the audio out of it. So you're gonna right click and then just clear it or ripple delete it depending on what you want. And then boom, you're just left with the video portion and there's no audio, so that way you can hear the audio. If you left it there, then obviously the audio down here, like we talked about before, would take precedent over your main audio, and that's not what you want. So that's how you basically unlink a track. That's how you basically unlink a video file. If for whatever reason we wanted to keep the audio, then like I said, we would just delete the video portion. It's really that simple, so just right click and unlink. Alright, so now we're going to move on to adding text here, and this is actually a lot simpler than you think. So we're going to go up to some of these tools here. You'll notice that one of the ones that we use a lot is the selection tool when you want to actually move something around and select it, or you want to just click on something without cutting it. Then obviously you have your razor tool, which is your cut tool that allows you to kind of cut certain things and take them out, like I showed you before. And then another tool that we're going to touch on here in this lecture is the type tool. Now that's going to let you, and it's important to keep in mind that you unselect everything when you use the type tool, otherwise it will type on that actual file. So you want to create some text. You want to create a text file. So make sure that nothing is actually clicked or nothing's gray when you're actually adding something here. Now, if you take your cursor, which is basically this line right here that moves along, that's where you're gonna, when you actually unclick it, where your cursor is where it will add the text. But you can always drag it and move it later. And then once you click this, you're just gonna click it in the frame right here in the picture and type your text out. So let's just say, whoa, didn't mean to do that. Let's say, if for example, I were creating a tutorial video and this was like number 1 in the tutorial, like step 1. Well, then I would basically write step number 1, right? And then unclick, and then you see the text file pop up right here in the graphic, and that's where you can basically drag that along or wherever you want it. So that's how you basically do it. Now, if you want to change the color, you're going to want to come back to the select tool, and you're going to select that, and then make sure that you highlight it as well. And then you'll be able to, if you come up to effects, how you're going to actually basically edit this out, you're going to come up to effects up here, and that's going to place it over here, right here. Sometimes it'll place it over on the left here. And then if you want to edit it, basically what you're going to do is you're going to come up to the selection tool. So you're going to hit the selection tool right here, and you're going to edit it. Now, if you want to make it a little bit bigger, you can simply drag it up and down. You can obviously move it wherever you want. But, that doesn't necessarily look great. The white doesn't look great. So maybe you want to change the color. Maybe you want to change the font. Maybe you want to do something with it. And one of the tricks that I'm going to show you how to do in a second is actually adding a little bit of an outline to it. But one of the things you have to do there is obviously you have to select it and then highlight it to make sure that you get that going. Now, what you want to do when you want to edit this is you'll see up here on the left it says Effect Controls. That's what you want to click. And that will allow you to start editing it. So for whatever reason, if you had a lot of text, you can obviously center that text. And then you'll have to drag it back over by using the selection tool. and moving it wherever you want. Now, it's hard to see that because it just says step 1. There's not like a paragraph there, so it's hard to see whether it's centered or not centered, but that's just basically how you would do that. Then if you want to increase the size of it, you can just drag it up, make it bigger, drag it down, make it smaller. Pretty similar to the just drag by the corner method. That's how you edit that. Now, if you want to change the text, actually, boom, just right here, pretty simple. If you want to change the actual font there, that's how you're going to do that. And then one of the tips that I actually love to use down here, if we scroll down, is you'll see this appearance thing. And this I find works well on my videos because it doesn't matter if, let's say hypothetically I was making this and this was actually a video I was going to put up on my YouTube channel or something like that. Well, maybe I'd want to put this up in the top left corner so that it was inconspicuous, but people could still see that it is, okay, this is the start of step 1. That white doesn't look very good, right? It doesn't. So maybe I would want to change it to, blue. So we're going to click the fill color and we're going to change it to like a blue color, right? But that doesn't look very good either. You can't really distinguish that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Z and undo this to change it back to white. You can obviously just go back to the fill and change it to white if you want. And what I like to do here is I'm going to keep it white. This is just a personal preference, and I'm going to change the stroke. So I'm going to add a stroke by clicking this check mark right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to add an outer layer so that you can kind of see the inside white and also add an outer layer there. Now I'm going to change the stroke to maybe something like a red or a blue. And you can play around with this, but it basically kind of adds a cool little touch there, kind of adds a different popping element to the text, and really kind of keeps it so that you can see it and it's easily distinguishable, but also adds kind of a cool element there. I'll show you what I mean by that. So we're going to click stroke, okay. Now see that's a little bit, you can barely see the little red on the outline there. So if you want to make the stroke a little bit bigger, you just come over here to this right here to stroke width on the number and you click it. And then you can basically change that. Now I found that if you go about 10, it's a little too much and it looks a little kind of cartoonish. So what you really want to do is you kind of want to play around with it and find a good number for you. And depending on how big it is as well, you might find that you like 10 and that's totally fine. I find that maybe like 6 or 7 is usually good. It's enough to kind of distinguish it. Maybe like 7 would be good. Let's try that. It's enough to kind of distinguish it while still keeping it, uncartoonish. It looks a little bit better in my opinion. And that's how you basically play around with that. That's how you're going to basically, change the color, change the font, basically center it if you have a big paragraph or you're typing something in. That's how you're going to play around with it. You're going to use the text tool like we talked about. You're going to type it up. So one thing that, like I said before, when you're typing in, you're using the text tool, make sure you don't have anything selected. So if you're adding a bunch of text, you don't want any other text selected. See how that's gray? You don't want that gray. What you want is you want to click off of it so nothing's selected and then add a text. Because if you have this selected and you add text, it's going to add text in the same frame as this. And that's not what you want 99.9% of the time. So if you're adding more text, click off of it. Drag your cursor over to where you're going to want it. Maybe it's up here on the third layer. Maybe it's down here, wherever. And then you're going to add text again and add text. And then if you want to change it, I can't spell text clearly. And then if you want to change it, like I said, make sure that now that it's a different text file in general, you can then adjust this as well. So if you want to center it, if you want to change the color of this, maybe you want this stroke to be like, a green. I don't know why you would, but maybe you do. And then that's how you're basically going to do that there. So that's basically editing text and adding text in a nutshell. Play around with it and use that to your advantage. It's just another tool in your arsenal. All right, so now the fun stuff. Now we're going to add a transition, okay? Now this is usually, you can add this for multiple different reasons if you're transitioning from frame to frame. So maybe you're adding some B-roll, or maybe you were kind of touching on a certain point and then you transition to a different scene. Or maybe there was like a lull and instead of cutting it, you want to just add a transition. The easiest way to transition, if we kind of maximize this a little bit to, you'll see here that these are clearly two different sections. So if you wanted to add a transition between these sections, let's delete this audio out of there. What you basically do is if you hover over the middle of that section with your selection tool, not your cut tool, with your selection tool, you'll notice that you can simply click it, right? And that's gonna, if you click that, it'll start to notice that, okay, that's pointing this direction on this this section right here. If I go to the other side and I click it with that little red thing, it's gonna point to this section over here. Basically, you're gonna add a transition on either this section or this section, and by doing that. So you're gonna want the right thing right there, and then right click on that, and you'll see apply default transitions, and it will simply apply a default transition. Let me play it for you and I'll show you. So that way it doesn't just cut through, it actually does a cool transition. Now you can use this for a bunch of different reasons. I'm not going to get into the whys and the maybe hows of how you might want to use it, because there's literally thousands of different ways to use a transition, but this is basically how you add one. Let me show you.
Just because I'm bringing these up doesn't mean that I'm invested in these companies. Look at the balance sheet.
See that right there? It was a little subtle, but let's play it again.
Doesn't mean that I'm invested in these companies. Look at the balance sheet.
It's kind of like a mirage and a mirroring into the next one. Now this is it's hard to kind of see this because it's a very, very similar in this section, and in this section I'm literally sitting speaking in the same chair, so it's not that big of a deal. It's harder to kind of see that, but that's basically how you're going to add a transition. Now for whatever reason, let's actually clear that transition. If you don't want that there anymore, you just right click on it and you click clear, and you right click it down here and you click clear. And basically what you're going to do here, if you want to actually add a different one, is you're going to come over to effects, and that's going to show you right here. So then you're going to say video transitions. There we go again with the pop-ups. Love me some Windows. You're going to come over to video effects, or sorry, video transitions. And you'll start to notice that you can play around with different transitions. So whatever the default one is set at for you, that's what it's going to hit when you hit apply default transitions. But if you want, for whatever reason, maybe you want like a wipe in, and you want like a wedged wipe or something like that. Or maybe you want like it to zoom in for your transition and have a cross zoom. Or maybe you want it to dissolve into the next section. So what you can basically do is you want to click these. You'll see that cross dissolve is what it's actually set at right now. But let's say for hypothetically we wanted a page peel. So let's go page peel right here. We're going to click it and set it as the selected default transition when you right click on it. And then you'll see that it highlights. So that way when we come here and we actually set this as a transition right here and apply the default transition, it's no longer going to be a cross dissolve. Instead, it's going to be a page peel.
These up doesn't mean that I'm invested in these companies. Look at the balance sheet.
See that different transition? Now, like I said, it's harder to kind of see that transition and kind of understand the effect of it, because this section and this section are very, very similar, and I'm in the chair. But like I said, you can use this for so many different reasons and so many different, kind of techniques here and strategies. I just want to show you how to actually add them so that you can use them for whatever reason and technique you see fit. Now, there's so many different transitions here that you can play around with. You can obviously go through and look at them. If you want to test them out, then basically just keep undoing or deleting them, and you'll see that the transition disappears. Maybe you want to see like, oh, what's a clock wipe? I want to see what that looks like. So what you're going to do, you're going to click on it, you're going to right click and hit select it and set it as a default transition. It will highlight that blue, and then you can come down here and see, oh, what does the clock wipe actually look like? Do I like that or not?
Doesn't mean that I'm invested in these companies. Look at the balance sheet.
See how it kind of clock wiped out? So that's how you can basically add transitions, set your default transition, basically add one there. You can play around with them. There's literally so many of them. If you click the little down arrows, there's like so freaking many. But that's basically how you do it. There's so many different advantages to doing this, so I hope that this really helps you out. All right, really briefly, I want to touch on more cool video effects. We just touched on the transitions and how you can basically play around with them with video transitions. But if you click on video effects, and you can really play around with any of these, there's audio transitions as well. I don't really use them that much. There's also audio effects, but I usually like to download my sound effects. You can play around with any of these. You can look at the presets. But one thing that I do mess around with a lot and use are video effects. So depending on what you're doing and what you're actually editing, you can add different video effects. If you click on these, you can kind of play around with them and see what they are and add them to your video sparingly and use them as you please. So if we click video, one of the ones that I use from time to time would be like a time code. So if you want like a time code in there, then boom, you can add a time code to your video. You can also add, if we delete that, you can add like a clip name. So if you're, you want to add a clip name just to kind of, go through so you can edit it and move it around later, that might help you there. You can play around with these. There's literally so many different things here that you can touch on and check out. But that's basically just more video effects that come standard in Adobe Premiere Pro. Like I said, there's so many video transitions. There's so many video effects. You're not going to really understand and master them all right away. But I would just say take maybe 20 to 30 minutes, play around with a bunch, see which ones stick out to you, which ones that you like, and which ones you think that you can use going forward. Because that way, if you know them ahead of time, you can kind of create something with the end goal in mind, knowing that, hey, I have that transition in the bag, so maybe I can add something here with a cool transition. Or hey, maybe I'll add a clip name here, or some timestamps here, just to kind of show the audience what's going on. Whatever it is, just play around with them. There's so many different cool effects here. The more you look around and the more you look through them, you will start to notice that. Now I want to touch on stretching screen size. So if we basically remove these transitions really fast and we just clear them out, you'll notice that you can actually, this is also something that I touched on before, is if you edit one thing, if you edit one section, it's only going to do it for that one section. So a thing that you can do is if I want to edit and move the screen size for this, keep in mind that this is only going to be for this section. This section will still be normal screen size. Now, if you, for whatever reason, want to change something and you know, make the screen bigger or smaller for whatever reason, a lot of times if I'm creating like an Instagram video or I'm moving the screen around, I'll do it, you know, I'll literally move my screen around. So if this were a little bit smaller, maybe I'd want to move my screen like over or something like that for an Instagram video. Now it's a little bit, you know, hard to explain without being in an Instagram format here, but if you want to basically, you know, maybe you want to, let's undo that really fast. Maybe you want to, for this specific section right here, make this portion of the video a little bit zoomed in on your face for emphasis. Well, then you can obviously click on the video and you'll start to notice that you can move the video around and make it bigger just like anything else. So if you wanted to really zoom in for emphasis, if we pretend that like I'm making a face here for emphasis, watch as I play it now.
Currently, it is somewhat, like I said, always do your due diligence. Just because I'm bringing these up doesn't mean that I'm investing in these companies. Get the balance sheet, do your homework on these companies, and don't just take my word for the fact that I'm looking into them.
Speed it up a little bit.
Has been a great dividend payer for the, you know, honestly for a while now. Currently sitting.
That's something else that you can add to your arsenal. It'll help, you know, basically keep the audience's attention and engagement a little bit longer. And if you, for whatever reason, want to make it put an emphasis on something, or maybe if I wanted to zoom in on the fact that the Birds won the Super Bowl in this next clip, what I would do is I would cut this here and then maybe cut this here. And then maybe like, let's pretend I'm talking about the Birds being awesome and that they won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, not last year, sorry. What I would do is I would click on the video and I would zoom in on that actual picture. Zoom in on this one. And now let me show you what it looks like. Let's play it.
It's a better company than AT&T, doesn't pay, you know, a lot. I also half
That's a bad example, but you get the picture. That's basically how you're going to edit and drag pictures around. Now, like I said, you can do this with Instagram. So if you know, for whatever reason, if you wanted to create like an Instagram story, you know, that's a little bit different format, but you wanted to add this video in there, let me show you how to do that. So let's jump to that clip. All right, so this is something that I do, you know, quite frequently. I'll edit like a YouTube video or something else for an Instagram story. So this is like formatting 101. The first thing that you add is basically going to set your project up for that actual format. So you want to add something that's an Instagram story format. Obviously, if you're creating like a YouTube video or a Udemy video or something, you know, anything else, generally, it's going to be 1920 by 1080 format. But an Instagram video is formatted differently. So you want to get like an Instagram formatted thing. You're just going to title your project, obviously, and then open up Premiere Pro. You're going to input your media to start. So like I said, you're not going to input, the very first thing that you're going to input is not going to be a video format. What you want to do is you want to input an Instagram story or Instagram, you know, basically format video. So this is basically just a picture that's in that format so that I can set up Adobe Premiere Pro to actually have that format. So I'm going to add this in. And then you'll start to notice that it's only this tall format for an Instagram story, right? So then I can go through and add my video file. And let's pretend it's the dividend stock thing. And then when I add this in here, if we drag this a little bit out so we can see it, once I add my video file in, even when I'm over here in the video file, you'll notice that it's only in that tall format. It's not big like the normal screen anymore. So then if I wanted to add this and drag this over, if we kind of, let me move this over so you can see it a little bit better. Let me move this down. Then if I wanted to drag this over, I could put an emphasis on like me as a person right here in the Instagram story a little bit better if I'm dragging that further. And that's the benefits of kind of being able to drag and adjust the screen and kind of make the screen size bigger. And then basically I would delete this right here in the beginning. That's just a placeholder to kind of set the Instagram format out. So let's delete this now, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like now as an Instagram video.
Stocks that I'm looking into, I'll pop pictures of their ticker symbols and their their 5-year graph up on the screen for you.
Boom. And that's basically how you can create an Instagram story very, very easily with a different format by dragging the video in the Instagram format. So like I said, you just want to download something with an Instagram format. I forget the exact dimensions. I've created them before. And then you basically create your screen size by just simply adjusting it. If you didn't want that, maybe you just wanted it like a little bit big and you wanted to add some text up top, well, then you could drag it to there, and then this would be your format, and you could add some text up there as well by potentially adding a, where's the text thing? Let me scroll down here. Where are we at? There we go. So text there. So then we could add some text up here as like texty text there. You can really use your creative freedom here, but a lot of times I'll do this with like Instagram stories, and I'll also do this with like Instagram, TV for sometimes. Sometimes I'll clip my videos down, but none of that, you can't do any of that unless you're adjusting your picture here so that you can see it a little bit differently. So that's just another tool in your tool belt and tool in your arsenal. Use it how you want, use it how you wish. It's like I said, at the end of the day, it's just another thing that you can use to your advantage. Okay, so now I want to talk about where to get audio and where to get sound effects, because it's important to keep in mind that some of these things are copyright and you don't want to, if you're going to use them in your video and you're going to use them in your editing, you don't want to use something that potentially could get you copyright struck or have a copyright issue in the future. So I'm going to show you some places where you can get sound effects and music copyright free or royalty free, some places that I get them and then I use them in my editing. So first and foremost would be YouTube. So YouTube actually has an audio library with literally everything is copyright free. They have free music and you can basically sort through genres. There's so many basically things that you can look through here. There's a lot of them, and you basically kind of play them around for like background music potentially, depending on what you're looking for. So sometimes I'll come down and I'll just basically forget if it's ambient or let's try this one. Some of them, if you kind of lower the audio, can be good for background music to kind of keep audience engaged. So that's the first and foremost. That's the first place you can get it. Free music and sound effects, both in the audio library on YouTube. Now you do have to create a YouTube channel to do this, but you can create a free YouTube channel. It's very, very easy. The second place would just be to Google copyright free music or copyright or just literally sound effects. Now I haven't had any issues specifically with sound effects, so a lot of times I'll just download sound effects. So if you come over to YouTube, you can download like a sound effect. It's very, very easy to grab. So to give you an example, if I wanted like a cash register sound effect, I'd go like ka-ching. That I meant to say ka-ching sound effect in YouTube, right? And it will pop up with ka-ching sound effects. You can see I've watched this and I've downloaded this before. So if I wanted to grab this, like the cash register sound, what I would do is I'd copy the YouTube URL and I would take it into YouTube to MP3, a converter. And maybe I'd use this one. You can use a bunch of them. And I'd paste that in there and hit convert. The other ones from YouTube, like the sound effects and the music from YouTube, you can literally just download right to computer. And then you'd hit download. Boom, and that's going to download. So then if I wanted to add an audio effect, it's going to be hard. Let me actually switch this out because it's going to be hard to listen to this with the music that's already in this one. Clear this out, clear this out. Now let's add this for the subscribers. We'll drag that over. And then if I wanted to, for whatever reason, add the audio effect, I'd come to downloads where I downloaded it and I'd find the ka-ching sound effect. And what I would do is I'd drag that down into the audio because it's an audio sound effect. And if we maximize this a little bit more, we'll be able to see it a little bit better. Where is it? There it is. And then if I wanted to, you'll basically hear it if I turn it up, the sound effect of the cash register in there.
Subscribers in 2018, that's very, very effective.
A little bit subtle. You probably can't hear it that well. I could obviously turn this up or turn it down, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. I can also turn the audio for this up or down, which is something we'll touch on in a future lecture to come. But that's basically how you download sound effects and implement them. It's pretty easy. Now, if you want to download royalty-free music, like I said, you can Google it. Or one of the places that I like a lot is bensound.com. So you'll notice that Bensound has a lot of different audio files here. You can download a lot of them. Some of them you do have to pay for. If we click on let's go to corporate or pop. You'll see download, 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 download. Some of them you do have to purchase, but there is a lot here that you can download that's very, very good, high quality audio. And you can use it for background music. You can use it for a lot of different things. If you're using, just a little bit of B-roll and you're kind of trying to just create an edit without, really talking or make a tutorial, then download some of these. They can be very, very good. I like Ben Sound. Another place that I like is just going to YouTube and searching copyright-free music. There are a lot of channels out there with copyright-free music. You do have to make sure that you're careful that you're taking the copyright-free music from a channel that actually is a little legitimate copyright-free music. So some of them would be like No Copyright Sounds has a lot of them. One of my favorites is Nefix. So he's got some other great stuff. If we go to Nefix and we click on some of his stuff, and we go to his channel, you'll see that we go to his videos, you'll see that, okay, rumors, copyright free. This one is not copyright free. Copyright free, copyright free, copyright free. That means you can download these and use these in your video 100% for free, and there's no copyright issues whatsoever. And just to recap, if you wanted to download one of these things from YouTube, you're just gonna not listen to the ad, you're gonna take the URL, you're going to take it over into YouTube to MP3 converters, and then just simply paste the URL in and download it that way. It's really that simple. That's how you're going to add that. So for whatever reason, let's go through and do it for you to show you adding that. So YouTube to MP3, let's throw it in there, convert it. Might take a minute. I'm not even sure what Destiny sounds like. This might be a good or bad track. I haven't heard it before. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time to convert it. If it's a longer video, it will take a little bit more. There we go. Download that, and boom. Then we're going to take it over here. We'll delete the sound effects so you can see the thing here. And let's take it over to downloads, Nefix. And then if we wanted this like a background music, we drag it down there for that. And that's basically how you're going to add audio tracks and add, basically download sound effects. Now, in the next lecture, I do kind of want to touch on, how to actually, adjust the volume of this. So for whatever reason, if you just wanted this to be like background music, then you want to adjust the volume very, very low, I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, now really briefly, I do want to show you how to adjust the sound on a video. Now keep in mind that if you do have different sections, it will, like we touched on before, only do it for that section. So that's important to keep in mind. Now if we right click on this and we hit audio gain, you can either turn it up, you'll see adjust gain by, you can either turn it up by adding a plus and then a number, or you can turn it down by adding a minus and a number. So for this specific example, you can obviously play around with this and continue to do it, but I'm going to turn this down by like maybe 9 and see how that sounds. We're just going to try to look for it to be background music. And you'll notice that the bottom down here got a little bit smaller. The audio waves got a little bit smaller. Let's see how it sounds.
Alright guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about buying subscribers here in 2008.
Still a little bit loud for background music, so let's turn it down a little bit more. Now this is obviously a bad example because he makes like hip hop tracks and stuff like that, so you wouldn't necessarily use that as a background track, but I'm just showing you how to actually do this and implement it. So let's turn it down a little bit more. Let's turn it down 4 more notches, 4 more decibels.
Alright guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about buying subscribers here in 2018 and how to go about doing it the right way. So, typically speaking, when you first get into YouTube,
see how that sounds? It's just a way that you can adjust your volume and do background music. Now, same thing, if you wanted to make it a little bit louder, you just go to audio gain again, and you'd hit plus, and maybe turn it up like 10 decibels or whatever. And you'll notice the audio waves get bigger. You want to make it more, just add more, makes it bigger, and that's pretty much how you're going to adjust the volume level that way. Now let's delete this and I'll add the sound effect because the same thing goes for the sound effect. So if you couldn't really hear the sound effect before, let's turn it up.
Today I want to talk to you about buying subscribers here.
It can be hard. I can hear it because I'm in front of the computer, but you're listening through the mic on the computer. So let's go through and adjust the audio gain so that you can make sure you hear it. Let's turn it up so you can really hear it. Let's say like 20. That might be pretty loud, but let's try it.
So today I want to talk to you about buying subscribers here in 2000.
That was a loud cash register, but that's basically how you adjust it. A lot of times what I'll do is, if I undo this, is if I'm really just trying to have it subtle, a lot of times I'll turn a sound effect down. This one's actually pretty low to begin with, but a lot of the ones that you'll download are actually louder, and you don't want them that loud. A good example of this might be like a like or like a pop-up sound, or what's another one, a bell ring. Sometimes when I hit, like I say like on YouTube, I'll be like, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification, and I'll have like the bell sound go off. It's like a ding, but the bell's super loud. So what I have to do is I have to go in and I have to turn it down. I'll hit audio gain and I'll turn the bell down like 7 decibels, and it sounds a little bit better. Now obviously this one goes too far. You probably don't want to do that with this one, but that's just a way that you can turn it up or turn it down so that you can use that depending on whatever you see fit. All right, yet another tool in your arsenal that you can use. Now you might want to use this sparingly, but I'm going to show you how to adjust the time and basically speed a clip up. So you're not going to want your entire clip sped up. And just like kind of how I was showing you to adjust like the visuals if you want to drag the picture out for emphasis on certain things, this can be used for emphasis as well. So let me show you an example of this. If we're going to maybe cut this section right here and cut this section right here, and we wanted to speed up this clip right here just to kind of get through something really fast. One of the ways that I did this was when I was creating an edit showing people how I unbox certain things for arbitrage, and it was a long, monotonous process. So what I did is I sped the clip up super, super fast, so you could literally see me going through very, very fast the entire process. I literally cut through. I'll actually pop that clip up on the screen really fast for you. Oh, here we go. And that's basically how I did it. So I sped it up. So that basically that's what that looks like. But how you actually do that is you want to make sure that you cut where you want that clip to be placed, and then clip that or select that section, right click on it, and come up to, where is it? Speed duration right here. And then you're just going to speed it up. So maybe you want to speed it up to like 130%, and we'll see how that sounds. But make sure that you clip this little piece right here. You don't want that black. So you're going to ripple delete that.
Subscribers here in 2018. And how
so let's actually, it's a little bit faster, but let's actually add that up for emphasis. So we're going to undo that. We're going to undo that. Let's make it a little bit further down the line, and I'll speed it up a little bit more so you can actually tell this time. So speed duration, we'll speed it up to 150%, and we'll see how that sounds. So let me play it for you.
All right, guys. So today I'm going to talk to you about buying subscribers here in 2018 and how to go about doing it the right way. So typically,
now this is a bad example for a screen record like this where I'm not actually in it, but like I showed you before, you can actually use it for, various different advantages. If you're speeding up a clip like that, you can also, if I undo this, you can slow that clip down as well. But keep in mind that if you're slowing that clip down, it's going to space the clip out. So you need to give yourself a little bit of space there. So we're going to make sure to drag this over a little bit to give us some space. We're going to select this and we're going to right click and hit speed duration. Now you can obviously make it like 60% of that and see how it kind of comes out. Now let's see what it looks like.
All right, guys. So today I'm going to talk to you about buying subscribers here in 2018.
Now, this is a bad example, like I said, too, because it's basically a screen record, so you can't really see the person actually doing this. But a lot of YouTubers do this, and they literally slow themselves down for emphasis for certain points. And this is just another tool that you can use in your arsenal. Use it, play with it. You'll be able to use it for different things as you kind of come up with different ideas. But just like anything else in this course, it's just another tool in your tool belt. Use it sparingly. Use it for what you see fit, and you don't have to master everything at once. Alright, so now I want to teach you how to add like lower thirds and graphics to your actual, your workflow here. So for whatever reason, if you didn't want to just add the text like I was talking about, there are a lot of tools in here that you can use already pre-built and pre-made with, graphics already created. So you're going to come up here in graphics, and like I said, this is something you can play around with and kind of see what's actually available to you. If you look just how far you can drag this down, you'll see just how many things there are here for you to use. If you want to use this thing, kind of like that TV looking thing. If you want to use some captions, some titles, some lower thirds, they're all down here. So let's hypothetically say you wanted classic logo presents. You drag that down and use that in your video. You're gonna hit OK, so it syncs, and then that's basically gonna pop up there, and you can play with it just like it were text. Boom, done. And that's basically how you're going to do that. So if for whatever reason you didn't like this one, you can just delete it. And then make sure to clear it here so it disappears, or ripple delete it. And then just play around with the other different graphics here. If you click this and you browse, no, we want to browse. Let's go back to that. All right, let's go back to that. So just show you a few other ones really fast. If you wanted to kind of caption something on the bottom, there's a bunch of different uses and techniques for this. This right here is like angled credits that scroll up. You can use that. And that's basically how you're going to add any number of these things. A lot of times what I'll do is, you know, if I'm going to add, like, if I don't want to make just the one there, I'll add like a lower third like this, just a basic one, and I'll drag it down. Hit OK so it syncs. Once it syncs. And then you're going to come over and you'll be able to type here. Maybe you're going to say like Brian Guerra. And then on the bottom one, you can't really see it because it's white. But if you want to change that, like I said, just select it. And then come over to your effects, and you should be able to change that. You can, you know, center it, move it around, whatever. Come down, and you know, you can change the color here, or you can put a stroke on it as well. So that's basically how you're going to do that, adding lower thirds and adding different graphics. Play around with it. There's literally so many, just like the video effects and video transitions. It would take, you know, years to go over every single one, but just play around with it, see what sticks out to you. You know, spend maybe 15-20 minutes just going through different effects and different graphics and seeing what sticks out to you and what you feel like you could potentially use. Okay, so now I want to touch on, you know, how to actually adjust the color and the saturation of your visuals or your video. Now, you can do this for a number of different reasons. If you want to add emphasis, a practical real life example of something that, you know, you might want to do. Let's just take a section here to show you. Is one thing that people will do is they'll take people's content off YouTube and basically edit it and re-upload it for the ad revenue. Now, I don't suggest doing this. It's just something that people do. But basically, the way that you do that effectively is you adjust the visuals a little bit and you adjust the color. So if you come down to video effects, right, you can play around with certain things here. So you can obviously distort it if you want to, you know, basically magnify it or maybe mirror it or something like that. You can do all those. You can come down to the image control and adjust the color balance. You can also go through like the perspective, make it a little 3D. You can obviously come down and blur it. So if you want like a blurred image and you want to blur somebody's face, you can do it that way. And basically you can adjust all these certain things. Now you can adjust the color, you can adjust, you know, the saturation over here. You can play around with this just like anything else. There's a million different effects here, you know, and that's basically how you're going to adjust any color or saturation. What people do when they're doing that is they'll just add a bunch of these different things and distort the video slightly, so it's literally the same exact video, just slightly different colored, slightly different saturation. You know, maybe it's sped up just slightly, just ever so slightly, and that's basically what people do. So all that takes place over here in video effects. Play around with it and use it how you desire. All right, really briefly, I want to touch on the importance of B-roll. Now, B-roll is super, super important. The reason being, if you just upload a video file like this, that's just one main long video file, you can cut it and make it perfect and make it great. But you'll notice if you watch commercials or if you watch like a video that's well put together on YouTube, certain things pop up on the screen that you see, and you'll start to notice that, okay, there's different camera angles. They cut to different angles. They also post B-roll or other tracks on top of it. So there'll be like a video 2 track while they're talking and the normal video is playing like this.
So, typically speaking,
something else will pop up on the screen. Now, I showed you an introduction to that before, but I just want to touch on the importance of doing this. So even if you're adding another video, or even if you're adding, just an image here and there, that really goes a long way to help out. So if this were, let's drag this down a little bit. This looks bad. It's like too big. We're just gonna leave it like that. But just literally the littlest things, like adding B-roll like this, are gonna play along.
When you first get into YouTube, and I did this myself, you pump out a lot of content.
Are gonna do a lot to keep your audiences engaged and keep their attention. Now, if you're creating tutorials or how-to videos like this is, obviously this is like a course lecture. It's a little bit different because it's literally how-to. So you can't add too much B-roll you're not trying to draw somebody's attention. You're literally trying to teach. But with a YouTube video or something like that, it's important to add B-roll, add some effects, and build out your edit to keep people's attention. So, it maybe for whatever reason, if I were talking about like, a dog right here, and I wanted to add a dog, video to capture and keep people's attention while I was continuing to talk about it, well, what would I do? I'd go to YouTube and I might type in dog, dog video. And I'm going to take a short clip of a dog video, and I'm going to download that. But I don't want the audio, I want the actual... Whoa, that was loud. That's a cute dog. So I'm going to download YouTube video. Now, KeepVid's a good one, but also Online Video Converter works well as well. There's a bunch of them that work well. I'm going to download that, and I want to take that video from there. So now that I have it downloaded, let's add it into our workstation. So we're going to download it there, and like I said before, if you guys want to make your workstation a little bit bigger so you can see things, just drag it a little bit. Then you can see all the sorts of things that are in your workstation. So what I want to do right here is I'm going to add this here. Then using some of the things and the skills that we've basically had in this course so far, we're going to unlink it, and we're going to delete the audio because I don't care about the audio. I'm using this as B-roll. I just want a clip of a dog. So maybe I decide that I want the dog jumping in the snow right here. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it like right about here where he stops jumping in the snow, which is like right here. And I'm going to use that as B-roll. And I'm going to drag it over to where exactly I want it and where I'm talking about the dog. So let's pretend it's like right there, and I'll play it so you can see that that pops up. Let me drag this so you can actually see it. And let's play it.
Content, and you're not really seeing the results that you want to see. And so you start creating more and more content, and you try to scale up, you try to do a little bit better, and you realize that it's going to take some time. So the majority of content creators face this point where they decide,
And that's basically how you add B-roll. Now that is super important, and it's also super easy to do. The only thing that you have to keep in mind here is make sure you're grabbing video clips or even creating your own B-roll. You can also go to video places like Pexels, so Pexels.com, or like Pixabay, or anyone with like stock photo. Is that Pixabay like that? Any places with like stock photos or stock video files that you can basically use. So if I were to type in like dog here, let's try like dog video. And I can download like dog videos or dog pictures. So let's try to type in dog here. See if we can find a video. These all look like pictures. But every once in a while you can find a video. You can also go to Google and type in stock video. iStock Photo is a good one. Shutterstock's a good one. Videos at Pixels. There it is. So let's go dog. And boom, this is a dog video right here. Dog at the beach. And you can download this 100% free. It's copyright free and you can use it. So this is it. Just keep in mind that you don't always want to take them from YouTube because a lot of the times you'll run into copyright issues, especially for this example. You see right up here, it's my PM. Now that's clearly a YouTube channel and they branded it. So be careful with that. Like I said, always be careful of where you're getting your audio, where you're getting your video, and where you're getting your sound effects. But I just wanted to touch on the importance of B-roll and kind of how you can use it to your advantage to keep your audience engaged and capture their attention long term. Now that everything's pretty much done, we're going to pretend that this video file is done. We've added all our B-roll, we've done all our cutting, we've maybe built it out and layered certain things, added effects. What now you need to know is how to render and export. So I have certain render and export settings that I like best. So you're going to hit File, and you're going to come down to Export right here, and then go to Media. And it's going to pop up your render and export settings here. Now you're going to want to make sure that you come down here for source range and click the entire sequence. You don't just want it sequence in and out. You want the entire sequence so you get your entire video file done. Then you're going to name it whatever you want right up here. And in whatever file or whatever folder you want. So we're going to put it in downloads. We'll just name it like test video and save it. And then we're going to come down right here. Now this is where you're going to add the settings here, and this is important stuff. So audio I always keep the same, but you want to make sure that this is always 1280 by 720 at least here. If it's not, adjust it. And if you don't have a recording software or you don't have a computer that records that way, that might be something you want to make an investment into. The frame rate you can kind of keep similar. Now if you have a higher output computer like on my desktop, I put that all the way up to 60. You can also go to 59.97 right by 60, but anything around 30 to 60 is fine. 29.97 will do just fine for this. Now progressive, I like to keep it there, and square pixels should always be selected there. Now hardware accelerated is going to basically take it's gonna export and render your video a lot faster, but it's also going to use the hardware on your computer to do so. If you don't want it to do that, if you don't want to really take up a lot of your computer's power, you can go software only. I'm just gonna keep it hardware accelerated myself. Then I like to unclick profile and unclick the level. Now I'm going to switch the profile. This is just personal preferences, but this is what I found works the best, to high profile, and we'll come down to the level and hit 5.1. And that's going to drag you all the way up to the top. So you're going to drag it all the way down to the bottom, and you'll notice that profile's high selected and level 5.1 is selected. Then you're going to come down. If you really want to make it, if you're doing like a high quality gaming video and you really want to make sure that all your, literally everything is captured and all the details captured, then you're going to want to do 2 passes right here. I'm going to keep it 1 because it's just a tutorial how-to video. It doesn't really matter about like every little pixel or every little thing being captured. And then I'm going to change the target bitrate to 14. Now those are my preferred settings, and then you're pretty much done. Remember to name your video, remember that the entire sequence is selected, and then you're going to hit export and it will literally start exporting. And that's my recommended render and export settings, and that's how you can go about doing it yourself once you're done.